So just like Michael, I also went back to the UIC as the main repository of data. And this table that I put together based on UIC data from just last June shows a couple of things, one of which that Michael pointed out is just the overwhelming scale of the network in China. It's really quite astounding. When you look at the length in kilometers of the Chinese network, it's more than twice as large as everyone else combined. I mean, it's just amazing, just astounding. And that's just those that are in operation. And when you consider those that are further under construction and planned and long-term planning, it's even more of an imbalance in terms of the distribution of high-speed lines in the world. So it's just an incredible story. When we talked about this in 2012, the high-speed network in China was really just getting started. And so just to look at the pace at which high-speed rail has been built in China is just totally amazing, totally astounding. Then you can see the other countries there that follow. Spain now has the second largest in the world in terms of length of kilometers. And then you go to the United States, which appears on the list of the top 10. And I felt compelled to put an asterisk next to the 735 for the very reason that Michael pointed out, that there's only a very short section of track along the Northeast Corridor that can operate at truly high speed. But yet UIC designates the whole corridor as a high-speed corridor, which I think is quite generous for them to do that. But still, it shows up. The other thing, too, that shows up is the amount that is either under construction, planned, or in long-term planning, which are some pretty significant numbers for the United States. So I'd like to kind of drill into that a little bit more. And this is what the UIC has indicated for the United States in each of those four categories: in operation, which is, of course, the Northeast Corridor; under construction, which is in California, particularly the Central Valley of California, and then several that are listed as planned. The Las Vegas to Victorville line, which is operated or to be operated by Brightline West, is one of those. The Houston-Dallas line, to be operated by the private Texas Central. Bakersfield-Anaheim, which would be an extension of the California system, taking it into the Los Angeles, Southern California area. And then the future plans for the Northeast Corridor. So those are the ones that I'd like to focus in a little bit more here, but also to note quite a number that are listed as part of long-term planning. And those would be those that Michael showed on his maps that are kind of like the wish list or the dream vision of what it might actually be. But apparently the UIC felt compelled enough to list them here as part of long-term planning for high-speed rail. So I just want to mention just a few more comments about each of these, which are seemingly the ones that are leading the way currently in terms of high-speed rail in the United States: Northeast Corridor, California, Brightline West, and the Texas Central. So first of all, with regard to the Northeast Corridor, a very familiar corridor, familiar route. Train service has been operational there for quite a long period of time, with periodic updates and upgrades in terms of service. The Acela train sets came online in 2000. And as we talked about, speeds do go up to 150 miles per hour in certain small sections of it. I was interested to take a look at the most recent plan for the Northeast Corridor, which is called Connect NEC 2035, that includes a number of upgrades to the Northeast Corridor, including adding or upgrading 100 miles of high-speed track, which would be up to 160 miles per hour, which would qualify under the UIC definition. But the price tag associated with the entire upgrade plan, that includes things like constructing another tunnel under the Hudson River, and other important infrastructural elements, comes out to $117 billion. So it's a pretty hefty price tag associated with it. But still, this is one of the things that should be mentioned. Of course, California is probably the big story when we talk about high-speed rail in the United States, and not all of it has been good. This has probably been the biggest disappointment of all of the ones. I mean, when I think back to what we talked about in 2012, the California planning was really just starting to get going, and there was a great amount of optimism associated with the California high-speed line. Not only did the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act put forward funding for high-speed rail, but California Proposition 1A designated funding for high-speed rail. And so the feeling at that time was that high-speed rail was off and running in California. 10 years later, we see that progress has been very slow. And now we're seeing that the estimated date of completion for the San Francisco to Los Angeles main corridor is not going to be until 2033. And even that is very much of an iffy completion deadline. It's just been an extremely difficult project, and cost estimates have been rising consistently throughout the last 10 years. When this plan was first put forward, the cost estimate was somewhere in the $30 to $40 billion range. And today it's, according to the most recent draft business plan, somewhere in the order of 72 to 105 billion. So there's significant difference in terms of the expected costs on this project. The Brightline West is an interesting one. This is an affiliated company of the Brightline Group in Florida, which has been successful in starting service between Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach, which is not high speed according to the UIC definition, but would count as being, I think it would count as being higher speed. Plans to expand it to northwards to Cocoa and then over to Orlando, which are going on. That would involve 125 mile per hour service. So we're getting closer to the UIC definition for the Florida line, but that still I don't think would qualify, and it wasn't listed by the UIC as one of the planned segments. But this one was, and this one has been talked about for a long time, having some high-speed rail between Las Vegas and the Los Angeles area. And perhaps with Brightline's support behind it, this one might actually go forward. I think that the UIC had listed a date of completion for this as 2023, but that's not going to happen. It's not anywhere close. They haven't started any real construction work on this yet. But chances are that this one might actually get going because of the support that Brightline provides. The proposed Texas Central Railway between Dallas and Houston is another private venture. This is one that has also received a lot of interest, and there's been a lot of optimism around it, at least in the past, much less so today, largely because of the things that Michael had already mentioned, a lot of litigation in terms of land acquisition in this corridor. And one of the issues that came up in some of these legal proceedings is whether or not Texas Central could be actually defined as a railroad, which is important in terms of its eminent domain or the ability to use eminent domain to acquire land. And there seems to have been some dispute about whether or not Texas Central could claim itself to be a railroad, which would then give it that those powers with regards to eminent domain. So this project has kind of been mired in political wrangling, and it's not really altogether clear how this is going to proceed. The planned opening is for 2026, but it's unlikely that it will achieve that plan. So those are really my comments that I wanted to share with everyone, just to kind of give an overview of sort of a look at the landscape currently in the United States, at where we are as far as high-speed rail is concerned, what are considered to be some of the most promising ventures with regards to high-speed rail in the U.S.